And here we are on Observer now with Coast City Councilman, congressional candidate. I mean, you have so much going on. Charles Gambaro on Observer now. How's it going today?
Hey, Rich, great to be with you, and congratulations on this new platform. I think it's a great opportunity to have a conversation, certainly with you, but with the community. So doing fantastic, doing fantastic. Happy Friday.
Yeah, and we're excited to have you on the show, and I appreciate that. And so much to talk about here. And I think we'll lead off with data centers, right? It's this
Sure.
new world that we live in. It's been a big topic of conversation. We saw it a couple of weeks ago with the Flagler County Commission. Coast City Council then picked up the conversation. Andy Dance with his proposal of a 100-day moratorium on new data centers and Vice Mayor Teresa Pontieri, she comes out and says we should reach consensus on the council to have a 1-year moratorium, send a letter of support to Andy Dance. Now, the conversation fell short of that. Ty Miller came in and said, well, it doesn't have to be a year. Maybe it's 5, maybe it's 6 months. I think there was consensus that we do need some kind of pause in research. What's your take? Tell us what exactly council decided on that.
Yeah, so really important topic, not only for our community, but for our state. And as we look at what the ramifications of those kinds of centers are on our community and certainly on our environment, we need to take a hard look at it. There's all sorts of different types of technology. There's some massive data centers that use a ton of water and power. There's others that use, refrigerant cooling systems. They use solar power, so it doesn't bog down, the utilities of a local municipality or city. But I've always been of the belief that the use of the word moratorium kills any sort of economic development opportunities that we may be trying to shoot for as a team, as a council. Our council, I'm very proud of the work that we're all doing and really trying to drive economic development to make that happen, right? But we need the infrastructure in the buildings and things of that nature to get the right types of companies that come here. And so I support, and I said this during the council meeting, Ty Miller's approach of, hey, let's define what we think is a good fit for our community. Let's lay out the facts. And let's go ahead and move forward with an ordinance. I think attacking the problem, taking action is better than a moratorium, which in my opinion kind of admires the problem for a little bit. I think we, through our regular kind of legislative process as a council, can move forward and do that. And we can lay out all the concerns on the table. And there's some issues surrounding data centers which make them non-compatible with our community. And so, but there might be a good fit with the right technology that is compatible for our community that could potentially be a job creator for us. So it'll be fun laying all that out with the council.
Talk about infrastructure impacts. I'm looking at the City of Palm Coast website right now. And one of the first things I see is due to ongoing drought conditions, the St. Johns River Water Management District has implemented Phase 3 water shortage restrictions, limiting landscape irrigation to 1 day per week across Flagler County. Now, does something like that, drought conditions, water issues, does that strengthen the case for, say, a moratorium or at least being careful with something like this?
No, I mean, I think we have to look at it, right? And it's a capacity concern. Certainly on the wastewater side, we've made some very, very difficult decisions for our community. I think we've made some very strategic decisions for our community in investing in our water, wastewater treatment plants. We're exploring other wells as part of our capital improvement plan, and so we have a plan to address our water needs, currently and towards the future. And as we look at, the current, water levels now, I mean, we've got to take that into consideration. We have to be good stewards, but that doesn't preclude us from planning or from moving forward. The current cable landing station that we have with DC Blocks and Google, it's a refrigerant cooling system, which does not require water. So I don't see that system drawing a ton of water, during this period, and it's still under construction. So we'll see how our water levels improve, over the next few months. But we as a council will continue to drive forward and push strategic solutions to plan for the future. You know, since in the year and a half that I've been on the council, right, without us approving any new development, really, we've just kind of amended a few of them. There's still almost 20,000 people that showed up. Those infill lots are being built on, and people want to come and live in our community. So we have to be prepared and we have to plan for it. And that's what the council, what we've done in the last year and a half in tackling our infrastructure issues.
That's interesting. Sticking kind of with that, how do you balance economic development opportunities against resident concerns about quality of life and environmental impacts?
Sure. Well, we're in the process. Last year we approved our comprehensive plan, which then now is driving our process of updating our land development code. In our land development code, we have set asides to ensuring that we address environmental concerns and we keep the natural beauty that makes Palm Coast the paradise that it is, and the reason why people want to live here. With regards to economic development, there are areas and there's companies that we're currently in discussions with that own, and this has nothing to do with the westward expansion. This is in other parts of the city that are very much interested in moving forward and establishing an economic development zone. So we're working through that, but in order to do that, we have to have two big things. We have to have the land and the buildings, and big businesses and landowners. What do they want? They want to have a council that's stable. They want to have a council that can work and block and tackle and get things done. I think one of the biggest distractors to economic development is when there's constant turmoil on a council. And we've had some speed bumps over the last year, and I think all of us are committed to working together to drive in what matters most, and that's driving results for our residents.
And sticking with that and westward expansion, you were there at the Loop Road groundbreaking, and you had a positive take on it. Mayor expressed some concerns at the Loop Road groundbreaking. You said that the Loop Road project was more than just a road. It was very important to the future of this city. And Mayor Norris did support the road going through the area. He said he didn't support the donut hole. So talk about that project and why it's so important for the future of the city.
Yeah, so I think in a public setting, good leaders provide a positive image and provide a positive guidance towards the future. And I respectfully disagree with the mayor. He has his positions, but I got to tell you, we're very lucky that the state of Florida gave us $126 million to build that road, which will connect with State Road 2209, which will come down from Jacksonville all the way down to really the St. Johns River Bridge right there on the border between Volusia and Seminole County. And so it's a tremendous opportunity. It'll be a massive corridor for us in economic development, and it's going to interconnect, the vision for what we have and what we call Palm Coast 2.0 toward as we expand westward. We have a tremendous opportunity as a council. ITT is the one that laid out the master plan for Palm Coast right in the 70s and really grew that going forward. This is our opportunity to be ITT and really lay out strategically, and this is what our residents want. They want us to be, they want smart growth. What does smart growth mean? Smart growth means that we have the infrastructure in place so that we can properly receive and absorb all of the new residents that are coming into our city. So quite frankly, we've been playing catch up, and because they're tough, policy decisions that have to be made, and they got to balance that against other priorities. So I think the Loop Road is a fantastic thing for our city. Anytime we can lay road infrastructure that interconnects us with another major highway that will drive economic development even more, is a fantastic thing, and it will be, you know, at the centerpiece as we move forward with our discussions with regards to the MPD and the westward expansion.
Is the developer paying enough there? Radiant, Rayonier, that was a big topic of conversation and debate. Should they be paying more?
Well, I think that from where they started in the MPD to where they're at now, I think they have given a lot, and so the negotiations between Rainier's team and our staff has been very successful. And I want to just highlight our community development director, you know, John Zobler, and his entire team. They have been working around the clock to find a way to get the yes. So it's a win for the city and a win for the landowner, right? Because landowners have rights too, and they're a massive land. I mean, it's 55,000 acres out there, and so it's you know, they get a vote as well. But I think we're at the point that we will be bringing this to planning board here in the next couple months, and hopefully moving it forward for discussion and passage through ordinance. But we have moved, and they have moved a lot more in our direction, and I think we're in a good place. You know, if the Palm Coast staff, you know, our city staff were to say, hey, we don't recommend this, then, you know, that's a problem. That means that it's not a win for us. But if the city staff comes to the planning board and to council and says, hey, this is we think this is you know, we're in a good place where it's a win-win for both the city, number one, and our residents, and number two, the landowner. I think that will be the telltale sign of whether or not they have given enough and move forward. You know, a big portion of that, Rich, is there's an economic development zone. I mean, everybody, you know, because of our history of having so much residential development here in our city and in our county, thinks that that's kind of, you know, where they're going to go. Well, that's not the case. It's a blend. It's a mix of different opportunities for us to expand and grow. And what I mentioned earlier with regards to buildings and land, that's going to add capacity for us to bring to you know, expand through economic development and diversify the tax base. It's going to be a huge help. And so I think we need to look at this holistically. We need to look at this opportunity strategically. It has to be a win for the city. And that's why I'm excited about it. That's why at the Matanzas Loop Road, I wanted to end off that groundbreaking, you know, discussion and ceremony with a positive note, because I think, you know, through hard work, through, you know, direct, honest discussions, and our staff and our council being the honest brokers for our residents, we can get to a yes on what Palm Coast 2.0 can look like. And in this case, the residents and the council and everybody will have an opportunity to chime in versus ITT, which, you know, that was a private company developing this whole area. You know, another example of a private company developing, you know, a big area. I was just there a couple of days ago, is the Villages, right? They've got, I don't know, 30 different CDDs under a private company. And so they've got 125,000 people there in the Villages, and they saddle both Lake and Sumter County. So this is an opportunity for our municipality, our city, with input from our residents, to help set the table for the next, you know, for the next generation of our residents. They're going to love living here and working here into the future.
One more thing on that westward expansion. I think there's some confusion. You know, on one hand, you have the mayor say, we do not have the water capacity for westward expansion. And when I talked to Councilman Sullivan, he says, well, that's true. However, you never have more than you need. So when you get the westward expansion, you get the water capacity. Am I missing something here? What's the story with water as far as westward expansion?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's a couple things there, Rich. Number one, when you look at development and we go through the process, you know, the development process and the planning process is a multi-year, sometimes decades-long process. The St. John's Water Management District will not give you, they won't permit you to move forward unless there's capacity. Okay. And as we're looking at the westward expansion, And that land, within those 55,000 acres, there is most of our future well sites. Guess where they're at? They're on those 55,000 acres. As we look at, with our capital improvement plan, hey, we've got certain water wells that have brackish water and others that are better. As we look at having that capacity for our residents in the future, most of those sites reside on those 55,000 acres. So even within that whole project, the water resources that we need are there. And then, on the wastewater side, well, we will have to continue to expand our wastewater treatment plant and move forward. Just remember, wastewater treatment plant 1, right? I got appointed in October of 24. We had Hurricane Milton. I was out there, on the front lines, if you would, with our employees, making sure everything was still operational. 6.8 million gallons capacity at wastewater treatment plant 1. We ended up having close to 20 million gallons flowing through there. A lot of it was due to water intrusion through our manholes and our PEP systems, right? And that's why all new future developments, they're going to be curb and gutter. They're not going to be swales because of the intrusion challenge that we have with the PEP system. And so that's going to give us a lot of capacity back as we continue to expand. That wastewater treatment plant 1 will, when we're done with the project, will be at 10.4 million gallons. So we added another 2 million at wastewater treatment plant 2, which is, on the west side of US 1. And so we will not get permitted if we don't have the capacity. And so far, nobody's told us no. So and then we have a plan again for the future with the water wells that are situated exactly on the place where where the westward expansion is going to occur. And so again, I would disagree with the mayor. We're not out of water. If we were out of water, Brian Roach would be jumping up and down and telling us that, and he's not doing that.
All right. And sticking with infrastructure, roads, big topic of conversation a few weeks ago. Maintaining those roads, I believe Councilman Ty Miller said something to the effect of, we're losing the battle, and there's a $9 million shortfall on funding, maintaining the roads. What's your take on what's going on there?
Well, I agree with Councilman Miller. I mean, it's we're going to get to the point. We did a lot of the micro surfacing, which was kind of a Band-Aid, but you can only do micro surfacing if the road level is at a certain condition. Certainly we've invested. I mean, if you go up and down Belterre Parkway and other places on Whiteview, you'll see the signs of some of it's grants that we've received from the state, and others are appropriations that we've made out of our budget, out of our general fund. We have a shortfall, and it's going to be a major point of discussion for our budget process here over the next several months, and we're going to have to make some hard choices. Do we pull some out of reserve? Do we move into other options? Where do we move stuff from? Do we fund a portion of them? Carl Cote, our engineering director, laid out some options to where we fund $2.5 million. But really, if we don't start fixing old problems and really becoming more proactive as we move forward, we're going to continue to have these major shortfalls, not just on our main roads, but on the residential roads and the main roads that go through our neighborhoods. So it's a problem set that we're going to have to look on how what the options are, because we can no longer ignore it. We've got to move forward, and we do have some money budgeted in our capital improvement plan, but it's not enough to cover it. And we're at a point, just like we were with our wastewater treatment plant. These are hard decisions that have to be made. In the past, that was funded with a half-cent sales tax, but I don't know where the council stands on that, and whether or not there's an appetite to do that from our residents, given some of the tough choices that we've already had to make this year.
The half-cent sales tax, sometimes not so popular when it's brought up. And that leads me to this, as this is very interesting. As you know, Florida lawmakers recently approved a proposal that could significantly reduce or eventually eliminate some property taxes if voters approve it. Of course, residents love the idea of lower taxes, most do. but local governments rely on those dollars to fund roads, public safety, infrastructure. As a city council member and congressional candidate, which we'll get to here in a minute, where do you stand on that proposal, and how would Palm Coast make up that lost revenue?
So, as an individual, right, I think it makes sense on homesteaded properties, right? Because, the reality is after you own your property for a long period of time, really your taxes don't go up that much. It's when the house gets sold and resold again is where it moves forward. We have a lot of 100% disabled veterans in our community. They don't pay taxes, right? They've earned that right not to pay taxes because of their disability status as veterans. And so there are a lot of examples. I don't support it on commercial property, on second homes, on vacation rentals, and things of that nature, because we still do have to fund our basic, services. Public safety is our number one priority. Our schools have to get funded. I mean, that's not our lane, but we all have to support our schools. And so it'll be interesting to see what the voters. I think the right thing to do was to put it to the voters by referendum and let the Florida voters make a decision. And I was with the governor down in Melbourne when he first started rolling this out. And he kind of talked about it in generalities, but what ended up, going into the special session was, the 150 for the first year of, of exemption for your home, and then up to 250. And so, but it presents a challenge for local leaders on how they're going to fund these items. So I think the devil's going to be in the detail on how this actually gets implemented, and then how the legislation is written in order to properly account for everything. And then, I'm a big home rule guy, right? The more money that goes to the state, they're the ones that make the decision, not our local residents. When I served on the Flagler County School Board, it was a challenge every day because we collect all those ad valorem taxes, through our tax collector here locally. Then we send it up to the state, and then the state, divvies it out to each of the counties based on student enrollment, right? And so that's an example of, the state having a lot of control over, the financial status of a certain school district based on enrollment. And so we just have to be careful. I look forward to seeing, how the vote on that goes. Certainly the Florida League of Cities and Counties, they're 100% against it, but I think there needs to be a balance. I mean, it's like anything else, we need to find a win-win, but from our residents' perspective, we put a lot on their plate this year, and a little tax relief, I think, would be helpful.
Yeah, and a recent survey from Stetson University Center for Public Opinion Research says 77% strong support in Florida, 85% Republican, 68% Democrat. So it's something that is supported statewide.
Yeah,
anyway.
Yeah, well, that's why it took less than a week to pass it through the legislature last week. I mean, it's on homestead properties, I think it makes sense.
And congratulations to you, Councilman Gambaro, maybe Congressman Gambaro, coming up later this year. Congratulations on your candidacy for the Florida 6th Congressional District. Talk about that. What's your motivation here?
Well, first and foremost, I absolutely believe that whoever represents us in Washington should live in the district. And, our current Congressman, Randy Fine, he lives 150 miles away. So when he comes home from Washington, and he doesn't come to the district, he goes to Melbourne Beach, right? I mean, he's an extreme carpetbagger. And he's not one of us. He doesn't know our community. He doesn't know how to get around. I mean, he's going to show up tomorrow because Byron Donald is going to be here for an event, and then he's going to leave, And so, and then the other thing is leadership matters, right? What are members of Congress supposed to do? They're supposed to serve all of our constituents. He's got like 5 or 6 different offices across, the congressional district, which are basically conference rooms. If you go to his website, it says by appointment only, right? By appointment only. Well, so if I had an issue, let's say I wanted to put in a VA claim or something like that, I have to set an appointment to talk to somebody versus being able to walk into an office and ask for support. It's ridiculous. And so, as we move forward, we're going to win this campaign because we're going to outwork Randy Fine. He's not a man that works very hard. I got to tell you, he's not a man that respects our veterans. One of the big motivations for me was watching him last year, our Memorial Day service. Those of us that served, right, we wear our uniforms on Memorial Day because it's a really tough day for a lot of us. It's hot, right? But that's not, it doesn't matter. This guy couldn't be bothered to put on a freaking tie. And he was the main speaker for our ceremony. Same thing happened this year. Couldn't be bothered to put on a tie. It's a lack of respect for our veterans. And I'll tell you, he shows up late all the time. And if he lived in the district, maybe he wouldn't have that problem. But we're running a grassroots campaign. We've been endorsed by the former Secretary of Defense, Chris Miller, former Sheriff in Volusia County, Ben Johnson, former Sheriff in St. Johns County, David Shore, the former Mayor of Ocala, Kent Ginn, and the Palm Coast Firefighters Union, and Dave Sullivan, my fellow council member, Commissioner R.J. Santori out in Flagler Beach, and our state attorney, R.J. Larissa. So we're proud of the community support, the community momentum that we're building. When I get to Washington, we're going to work on a ton of things, and I guarantee you the first thing that's going to be on the agenda is writing legislation to get money for our infrastructure, not just for Palm Coast, but for whatever the requirement is across the the 6th Congressional District. And so when you go to Putnam County, there are a lot of similar issues, right? Their hospitals need support. Their roads need help. Growing up here in Florida, right? Because I'm born and raised in Florida, unlike Randy. My congressman was John Mica, and he was the one that was able to get the necessary funding to build the 417 that starts down in Seminole County, goes all the way up into International Drive, which alleviates a lot of traffic on I-4. That's what members of Congress are supposed to do, right? Be innovative in thinking and how to support growth, right? Because we've had tremendous growth in Central Florida for many years. But overall, my philosophy when it comes to the 6th Congressional District is if we have infrastructure in place, if we can get the funding to move it forward, we can bring in the right companies to put our residents to work, especially here in Flagler County, where 55% of our residents go outside of the county for work. So infrastructure drives economic development and jobs. With good jobs, you can it comes good health care. With a good job and good health care, you can likely afford a home. And that's a major topic for us right now. Mm-hmm. Our homes are not affordable for our retired community. That costs have gone up, and they're looking at having the right size. And also our younger population that's trying to buy their first home. It's not there. We've tried. We're looking at all sorts of different options as a council. I serve on the county's Affordable Housing Committee. But as a member of Congress, I think that the funding through the infrastructure is going to have a tremendous impact into our community, a long-term impact going forward. Also on national security issues, I'm still an Army Reserve Brigadier General. I still have all my clearances, right? So, and I worked in DC for 7 years for the president at the National Security Council at the White House, in the intelligence community, in the Pentagon. So I know how that place runs, and I know how to get results in Washington. So I will be able to hit the ground running on day one.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. You've had a distinguished military career. You now serve on the Palm Coast City Council. How does that experience shape your approach to public service? Some of the political infighting that we've had, and it's been a push to get folks to try to get to run for city council seats. But it's if you take the servant leader approach and you see a need as to why you should serve, it's an easy choice. I will tell you, on that Memorial Day, where Randy Fine spoke at our city Memorial Day service, 15 of our veterans went up to my wife. Not me. They went up to my wife and they said, your husband should be our congressman, not that guy.
And so I will tell you, the last thing my wife wants to do is spend more time apart, but she recognizes the need that so it's a family decision. And so we made the decision that, you know, our residents deserve better. And so I think it's I just for our residents, I want them to think about this question. Okay, so when Randy Fine gets up on the morning, either early voting or goes to vote on election day on August 18th, he's going to go down to the polling booth, right, to the precinct, and then he's going to meet a poll worker who's going to hand him the ballot, and then he's going to go into the booth. When he looks down at that ballot, what is he not going to see? His own name. So why in the hell should we, the residents of the 6th Congressional District, allow somebody to represent us in Washington that can't even vote for himself, that's not here, that's not present, that hasn't delivered anything for our community? Right? Leadership matters. And this is why we decided to run, because we feel that we have the right experiences. You know, my family and I are equipped to serve in this capacity, you know, as long as the residents continue to send us to do that job. And we care about people. We live here. This is not a game for us. This is not, I'm not, you know, a good congressman doesn't need to go on Newsmax every 5 minutes to be an effective congressman. If they're on TV all the time and doing that kind of stuff, they're not working for the constituents. It's all about them. You know, quite frankly, I think Randy's auditioning for you know, a talking head. Maybe he wants his own show like Matt Gaetz or something like that. He's not serious about being our member of Congress. And so we're poised to win this thing. The math is there. There's a clear pathway. And you know what else? Randy Fine knows it too. He is running scared. If he wasn't scared, he'd challenge me to a debate, but he's not going to do that. He doesn't have the guts to do it.
Maybe we could get Randy Fine on Observer now to debate Charles Gambaro. I'd love that.
Bring it on. Bring it. I would love it, but he's too scared. He's just too scared. And so we're running a grassroots campaign. And I've got to tell you, I've shook over 10,000 hands in the district. Not one person has said, yeah, that's my guy. As a matter of fact, most people have said, you know, I'm a Republican, and we held our nose to vote for this guy. And you know, we're busy. I was in Lake County, you know, last week. I'll be in Putnam and St. Johns County here in the next week, meeting with our farmers and our ranchers because they have issues that, you know, we you know, as the next congressman, we're going to address and we're going to move forward with. So we're excited about the campaign. Go to www.voteforgambaro.com or @VoteGambaro on X to check out our campaign. Join the team, and don't forget to click on that donate button if you have an opportunity.
Coast City Councilman Charles Gambaro, candidate for Florida 6th Congressional District. Thank you so much for joining us on Observer Now.
You bet, Rich. Take care. Have a great weekend.